The snow was falling harder than my marriage was failing, which was saying something. I sat in my beat-up Honda outside the Hargrove mansion, watching the warm golden light spill from every window like liquid money. 23 years old, this annual Christmas party tradition, and I still felt like the help every damn time. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Eliot Carver, and I'm a mechanical engineer at the water treatment plant. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps the city's toilets flushing. My wife Samantha always introduces me as just an engineer to her family, like I fix broken toasters instead of designing million-dollar filtration systems. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, I had the ring. Not an engagement ring. We'd been married 8 years. This was her grandmother's ring, the one she'd been obsessing over since her grandmother died last spring. Took me 6 months of overtime and selling my motorcycle to afford buying it from the estate auction. The old bat's lawyer had driven the price up something fierce, but seeing Samantha's face would be worth every penny. I checked my watch. 7:15 p.m. The party started at 7, but arriving fashionably late was better than standing around making small talk with Charles Hargrove about his golf handicap, or listening to Vivian critique my choice of beer over wine. The mansion loomed before me, all colonial columns and imported stonework. Old money. The kind that came from great-great-grandfather's textile mills built on the backs of Irish immigrants who died young and unmarked. Charles never let me forget that his family built half this city, while mine just worked in it. I grabbed the small velvet box from my glove compartment and headed up the circular driveway. My boots crunched on rock salt scattered over brick pavers that probably cost more than my annual salary. Through the frosted windows I could see the usual suspects. Samantha's sister Trish holding court by the fireplace, Uncle Bernard pontificating about politics, and various cousins I'd met exactly once a year for the past 8 years. The front door was unlocked. Typical Hargrove arrogance. Who would dare rob them in this neighborhood? I stepped inside, shaking snow from my jacket. The house smelled like cinnamon and money, with undertones of superiority complex. Eliot! Vivian's voice carried that special tone reserved for unwelcome guests and door-to-door salesmen. How wonderful that you could make it. She glided over in a dress that cost more than my car payment, air-kissing somewhere near my cheek without actually making contact. God forbid she catch poor. Wouldn't miss it, Vivian. Where's Sam? Oh, she's in the living room with the family. We're having the most wonderful conversation. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. She has some rather exciting news to share. Something in her tone made my stomach clench, but I pushed through the crowd toward the living room. The usual holiday chatter filled the air. Stock portfolios, vacation homes, charity galas where they spent more on flowers than most people made in a month. I paused in the doorway, scanning the room for Samantha's auburn hair. There she was, standing by the Christmas tree, radiant in a green dress I'd never seen before. Expensive, judging by the way it fit. When had she bought that? Everyone, please, I have an announcement. Samantha's voice rang out over the conversation. The room fell silent. Charles raised his champagne glass expectantly. Trish practically vibrated with anticipation. I stepped forward, thinking this might be the perfect moment to present the ring, to finally do something that would impress this family. I'm pregnant. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Pregnant? We'd been trying for 2 years with no success. The doctors said it was stress, that we should relax, maybe take a vacation we couldn't afford. When had this happened? But then she continued, and the sledgehammer became a wrecking ball. Jake and I are going to be parents. The room erupted in cheers. Charles clapped Jake Halpern on the back. Jake, Samantha's boss at the marketing firm. Jake with his perfect teeth and Italian suits and BMW that never seemed to need repairs. Jake, who was definitely not her husband. It's about time Samantha found a real man, Charles boomed, his voice carrying clearly to where I stood frozen in the doorway. Someone who can provide for her properly. Jake's already looking at houses in Beacon Hill, Vivian added. Much more appropriate for raising children than that little place she's been stuck in. That little place. Our home. The house I'd spent 3 years renovating with my own hands, installing new plumbing and rewiring the electrical system. The house where we'd planned to raise our family. "When's the wedding?" asked Trish, practically bouncing. "June," Samantha replied, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "A proper church wedding this time, not some courthouse nonsense." Courthouse nonsense. That's what our wedding had become in family lore, a quick ceremony because we couldn't afford the kind of spectacle the Hargroves expected. I'd thought it was romantic, just the two of us, and a judge, and promises that apparently meant nothing. Jake wrapped his arm around Samantha's waist, pulling her close. "I've already spoken to Father McKinnon about using St. Mary's, the cathedral, not the chapel. Nothing but the best for my girls. My girls. Plural. The baby and my wife." I stood there like a statue, the ring box burning a hole in my palm, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. Nobody had noticed me yet. The family was too busy celebrating Samantha's upgrade from a blue-collar engineer to a white-collar executive. "Poor Eliot," I heard Uncle Bernard mutter to his wife. Though honestly, we all saw this coming. A man who can't even afford to take his wife on a proper honeymoon was never going to keep her happy. "Samantha deserves so much better," agreed Aunt Margaret. "Jake has that lovely condo downtown, and didn't Charles mention he's up for partner at his firm?" I backed away from the doorway, my heart hammering against my ribs. The front hallway suddenly felt too small, too warm, too full of other people's oxygen. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to not be in a house full of people celebrating my wife's betrayal. The front door seemed miles away. I walked carefully, deliberately, like a man trying not to spill nitroglycerin. Behind me, the celebration continued. Someone had started playing piano. Silver bells, cheerful and mocking. The cold air hit my face like a slap, but it was welcome, clean, honest. I stood on the front steps, snowflakes melting on my cheeks, and tried to process what I'd just witnessed. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of working overtime to afford the life she wanted. 8 years of enduring her family's condescension because I loved her enough to believe it didn't matter. 8 years, and she'd thrown it all away for a man with a better credit score. I looked down at the ring box in my hand. 6 months of overtime. 60-hour weeks, ramen noodles for dinner and generic beer instead of the good stuff. All to buy her a piece of jewelry from a dead woman who'd probably hated me too. My phone buzzed, a text from Samantha. "Where are you? Family's asking." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Let them ask. Let them wonder where the poor relation had wandered off to. I had bigger things to worry about now. Like the fact that my wife was pregnant with another man's baby and planning to marry him in the church, where we'd planned to renew our vows for our 10th anniversary. I walked to my car, started the engine, and drove home through the snow. Behind me, the Hargrove mansion glowed like a beacon of everything I'd never be good enough for. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Our house. The little place that wasn't good enough for raising children, apparently. I sat in the car for a few minutes, looking at the windows I'd installed myself, the front porch I'd rebuilt after the last ice storm, the mailbox I'd painted to match the shutters. Inside, everything was exactly as we'd left it. Samantha's coffee cup from this morning still sat in the sink. Her romance novel lay open on the coffee table, bookmark holding her place. The Christmas tree we decorated together last weekend stood in the corner, presents underneath that would never be opened. I set the ring box on the kitchen counter and stared at it. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Morrison Law Office, emergency line. "Hi, This is Eliot Carver. I need to file for divorce. Tonight. Mr. Carver, it's Christmas Eve. The courts are... I know what day it is. I also know my wife just announced her pregnancy to her family. The father isn't me, and they're planning a wedding for June. I need papers filed first thing Tuesday morning. A pause. I see. Can you be here at 8 a.m. on the 26th? I'll be there at 7:30. I hung up and looked around the kitchen. Tomorrow was Christmas Day. Samantha would expect me to show up at her parents' house for dinner, to smile and play the role of the supportive husband while they planned her new life. Instead, I was going to give her a Christmas gift she'd never forget. The gift of consequences. Christmas Day passed in a blur of fake normalcy. Samantha came home around midnight, reeking of champagne and expensive perfume I hadn't bought her. She found me in the basement workshop, sanding a piece of maple I'd been saving for a jewelry box. Ironic, considering. "Where did you disappear to last night?" she asked, leaning against the workbench. Even disheveled, she was beautiful. That's what made this hurt so much. "Got a call from work," I lied smoothly. "Water main break on Elm Street. Emergency repair." She nodded, accepting the story without question. Why wouldn't she? I'd never lied to her before. "Well, you missed a lovely evening. Jake brought the most amazing wine from his collection." I'm sure he did. "Eliot, we need to talk." She sat on my tool chest, crossing her legs. "About us." "What about us?" "We both know this hasn't been working for a while. We want different things. You're happy with this little life, but I need more. I deserve more." I kept sanding, the rhythmic motion keeping my hands busy while my mind raced. More than what? More than a husband who comes home covered in grease, talking about pipe joints and filtration systems, more than a house that needs constant repairs, more than wondering if we can afford to go out to dinner. I see. The sandpaper was wearing smooth. I'd need to switch to a finer grit soon. And Jake offers more? Jake offers everything. Security, status, a real future. He's already talking about buying a house in Beacon Hill, maybe a summer place on the Cape. Sounds expensive. He can afford it. That's the point. She stood up, brushing sawdust off her dress. "I'm filing for divorce after the holidays. I wanted to tell you myself before you heard it from someone else." Too late for that, but I didn't mention it. "What about the house?" "You can keep it. I certainly don't want it." She looked around the basement with obvious distaste. "Jake says it would be too expensive to bring up to modern standards anyway." How thoughtful of him. "Don't be bitter, Eliot. We both know this is for the best. You'll find someone more suitable. Someone who appreciates this kind of life." She left me alone with my woodworking and my rage. I finished sanding the maple, then sat staring at it for a long time. Beautiful wood, perfect grain, completely wasted on someone who couldn't appreciate craftsmanship. Tuesday morning, I was at Morrison's office at 7:15. By 8:30, I'd signed papers and written a check that would drain my savings account. By 9, I was at work, designing a new pumping station like my world hadn't just imploded. But I wasn't just planning pumping stations. My first call was to Mick Donovan, my old Army buddy who'd gone into private investigation after his discharge. Mick specialized in divorce cases, insurance fraud, and what he called personal research projects. He owed me a favor from when I'd helped him install a new heating system in his office. "Eliot, how's married life treating you?" "Like a rented mule. I need your help, Mick." "What kind of help?" "The kind that involves cameras, financial records, and a man named Jake Halpern." Mick was quiet for a moment. "Your wife's boss?" "Among other things." "Can you meet me tonight? Darla's Tavern, around 8? "I'll be there. And Eliot, bring cash." Darla's Tavern sat on the wrong side of downtown, the kind of place where construction workers drank beer after their shifts, and nobody asked too many questions. Darla herself was 60-something, tough as leather, and knew more gossip than the entire staff of the local newspaper. Mick was already there when I arrived, nursing a whiskey and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He'd put on weight since leaving the service, but his eyes were still sharp. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "Feel worse. What can you tell me about Jake Halpern?" "Depends what you want to know. Public record stuff is easy. The personal stuff costs extra." I slid an envelope across the table. 500. Tell me everything. Mick opened the envelope, counted the bills, and nodded. Jake Halpern, age 42, partner at Halpern, Stevens and Associates. Makes about 300 grand a year, drives a BMW, lives in a condo downtown that's worth more than most people's houses. What about his personal life? Divorced twice. First wife got half his assets, second wife got the other half. He's been rebuilding ever since. Mick pulled out a small notebook. Here's where it gets interesting. Jake's got a reputation around town, serial workplace relationships. He's been through 3 different assistants in 2 years, all attractive women in their 20s. What happened to them? Transferred to other departments, quit, or in one case, filed a harassment complaint that mysteriously disappeared. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What kind of harassment? The kind where he promises them promotions, fancy dinners, maybe a future together. Then when he gets bored, they're out on their asses while he moves on to the next one. And the company knows about this? The company is Jake and his 2 partners. They cover for each other. It's an old boys' club with expensive suits and flexible ethics. Darla appeared at our table, refilling Mick's whiskey without being asked. "You boys talking about Jake Halpern?" "You know him?" I asked. "Honey, I know everyone worth knowing and half the people worth avoiding. Jake falls into the second category." She sat down uninvited, which was Darla's way. "That man's been in here bragging about his latest conquest for weeks. Pretty little redhead, married to some engineer. Says he's going to set her up real nice, maybe even marry her if she plays her cards right." My hands clenched into fists. "He talks about her here?" "Every Friday night, regular as clockwork. Buys drinks for the house, tells anyone who'll listen about how he's stealing some poor bastard's wife. Thinks it's funny." "What else does he say?" "That the husband's a loser who can't provide for her properly. That she deserves a real man with real money. That kind of garbage." Darla's expression darkened. "I've seen his type before. They think money makes them better than everyone else." Mick leaned forward. "There's more, Eliot. Jake's not as solid financially as he pretends. He's leveraged up to his eyeballs on that condo, the car, the whole lifestyle. Most of his money goes to maintaining appearances." "How leveraged?" "Mortgage, car loan, credit cards, personal loans. He's one bad month away from serious trouble." I absorbed this information, turning it over in my mind like a puzzle piece that might fit somewhere useful. "What about Samantha? Has he talked about her specifically?" Darla snorted. "Oh, honey, you don't want to hear this." "Yes, I do. He calls her his project. Says she's got potential but needs work. Talks about getting her away from her loser husband and teaching her how to live properly." The cold feeling in my stomach spread outward. Teaching her? New clothes, new friends, new attitude. He's already started from what I can tell. She's been in here with him a few times and she's different. Acts like she's better than everyone else now. I thought about the expensive dress she'd worn to the Christmas party, the perfume I hadn't bought her, the way she'd looked at our house with disgust. "There's something else," Mick said quietly. "Jake's got another woman on the side. Brunette, works at the bank. He's been seeing her for about 6 months. While he's been with Samantha? While he's been with your wife, yeah. Guy's a real piece of work." I sat back in my chair, processing everything. Jake was a serial cheater with financial problems and a history of using women. He was manipulating Samantha, probably planning to dump her once he got bored, and he was stupid enough to brag about it in public. "I need more," I told Mick. "Photos, financial records, anything you can get on both of them. That's going to cost more than 500. I pulled out another envelope. "There's 1,000. Get me everything." "What are you planning, Eliot? I stood up, leaving money on the table for Darla. I'm planning to give them exactly what they deserve. Outside, snow was falling again, covering the city in a fresh layer of white that would be gray slush by morning. I drove home through empty streets, past houses full of families who weren't falling apart, who weren't discovering that 8 years of marriage could be discarded for a man with a bigger bank account. The house felt different now that I knew Samantha was planning to leave it. Smaller somehow, less like a home and more like a way station. I walked through the rooms, looking at everything we'd built together, everything that apparently meant nothing to her. In the bedroom, I found evidence I'd been too trusting to notice before. Receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, tucked into her purse. A credit card statement showing purchases at stores I couldn't afford. A new phone with a password she'd never had before. I sat on the bed we'd shared for 8 years and realized I'd been living with a stranger. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved enough to endure her family's contempt, had been planning her exit strategy while I worked overtime to buy her grandmother's ring. My phone buzzed. A text from Samantha. Working late again. Don't wait up. Working late. Right. I deleted the message and went back to the basement. The piece of maple was still there, smooth and ready for finishing. I picked up my tools and started working, letting muscle memory guide my hands while my mind planned. Jake Halpern thought he was untouchable, thought his money and status made him bulletproof, thought he could destroy my marriage and brag about it over drinks. He was about to learn that some things were more dangerous than poverty, like a man with nothing left to lose. The next 2 weeks passed like a slow-motion car crash. Samantha continued her charade of working late, while I played the oblivious husband. She'd come home smelling like Jake's cologne, talking about fictional projects and imaginary deadlines. I nodded and smiled and asked if she wanted dinner, all while Mick gathered evidence that would destroy them both. On a Tuesday night in early January, Mick called with an update. "I've got photos," he said without preamble. "Jake and your wife at the Riverside Inn, 3 different occasions. Jake and the brunette from the bank at the same hotel, 4 occasions. Financial records showing Jake's been using company funds for personal expenses. And here's the kicker. Samantha's been helping him." "How?" "Falsified expense reports, inflated client billings, creative accounting. She's in it up to her neck." I felt a smile spread across my face for the first time in weeks. "Send me everything." "Eliot, be careful. These aren't nice people. If they figure out what you're doing, they won't figure out anything until it's too late." That Friday, I put my plan into motion. Jake parked his BMW in the same spot every day, executive parking space closest to the building entrance, right under a security camera that had been broken for 6 months. I knew this because I'd done the electrical work on the building's security system 2 years ago. At midnight, I drove to Jake's office building with a bag of supplies. The parking garage was empty except for Jake's car, gleaming under the fluorescent lights like a monument to his arrogance. I worked quickly and quietly. Sugar in the gas tank was a myth, but water in the oil reservoir would do nicely. I loosened the oil drain plug just enough to create a slow leak. By the time Jake noticed, his engine would be seized solid. For the air conditioning, I had something special. A bag of frozen shrimp, strategically placed where they'd thaw and rot in the ventilation system. The smell would be unbearable by the weekend, and impossible to locate without tearing apart the entire dashboard. But the real message was the note I left under his windshield wiper. "Congratulations on your new family, Dad. Hope you can afford it. A friend." I was home by 1 a.m., asleep by 2. Samantha came in around 3, trying not to wake me. I listened to her shower, washing off the smell of her betrayal, and smiled in the darkness. Saturday morning brought the first phone call. "Eliot, it's Jake." His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About the little message you left on my car and the shrimp that are rotting in my air conditioning." "I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about." Don't play dumb with me. I know you know about Samantha and me. No, what about you and my wife? A long pause. Nothing. Forget I called. Jake, wait. Is everything okay? You sound upset? Everything's fine. Just forget it. He hung up. I poured myself coffee and waited for round 2. It came Monday morning, in the form of Samantha storming into the house at 8 a.m., still wearing yesterday's clothes. What did you do to Jake's car? I looked up from my newspaper, the picture of innocence. Good morning to you too. What about Jake's car? Don't lie to me, Eliot. Someone sabotaged his BMW. Cost him $3,000 in repairs. That's terrible. Did he call the police? No, he didn't call the police. Why not? If someone vandalized his car, that's a crime. She stared at me, clearly trying to figure out how much I knew. He thinks it might have been personal. Personal how? Someone who has a problem with him. Can't imagine why anyone would have a problem with Jake. He seems like such an upstanding guy. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing at all. I barely know the man. I folded my newspaper and stood up. I should get to work. Unlike some people, I can't afford to take Monday mornings off. What's that supposed to mean? It means I have a job that requires me to show up. Speaking of which, how's your project going? The one that's been keeping you so busy lately? Fine, it's going fine. Good. I'd hate for you to fall behind on something important. I left her standing in the kitchen, confusion and suspicion warring on her face. Phase 1 was complete. Time for Phase 2. That afternoon, I made a series of phone calls. The first was to the Maine Department of Revenue Services, reporting suspicious business expenses at Halpern, Stevens & Associates. The second was to Jake's largest client, anonymously suggesting they might want to audit their recent bills. The third was to the local business journal, tipping them off about Jake's creative accounting practices. By Wednesday, Jake was getting visits from auditors. By Friday, his largest client had suspended their contract pending investigation. By the following Monday, the business journal was asking pointed questions about expense account irregularities. Mick called Tuesday with an update. Jake's in full panic mode. He's been calling lawyers, accountants, anyone who might help him clean up this mess. Word is, his partners are considering cutting him loose. What about Samantha? She's scared. Really scared. Someone told her she could face criminal charges if they find evidence of fraud. Could she? Depends what the investigation turns up, but even if she doesn't go to jail, her career is over. No accounting firm will touch her after this. I felt a warm glow of satisfaction. Perfect. There's more. Jake's been trying to liquidate assets, probably to pay for lawyers. He put his condo on the market yesterday. The one in Beacon Hill? The very one. Guess he won't be moving your wife into it after all. That evening, Samantha came home early for the first time in weeks. She found me in the basement working on a new project, a chess set carved from walnut and maple. We need to talk, she said. About what? About what you know. I looked up from the night I was carving. I know lots of things. You'll have to be more specific. About Jake and me. What about Jake and you? She sat down heavily on my tool chest, suddenly looking older than her 31 years. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. I'm not making anything hard. I'm just trying to understand what you're talking about. I'm in love with him, Eliot. With who? With Jake. I've been seeing him for months. We're going to be married. I set down my carving tools and gave her my full attention. That's interesting news. Does this mean you're divorcing me? Yes. I see. And when were you planning to mention this? I'm mentioning it now. After months of lying to me. After sneaking around behind my back. After announcing your pregnancy to your family without bothering to tell me first. Her face went pale. You were there? At Christmas? I was there. I heard everything. About the baby, about the wedding, about how I'm not good enough to provide for you properly. Eliot, You what? You're sorry? You didn't mean for me to find out that way? You were protecting my feelings? I was trying to find the right time to tell you. The right time. I picked up the knight again, studying its carved mane. When would that have been? After the wedding? After you moved into Jake's condo? After you had his baby? It's not like that. What's it like then? She was quiet for a long moment. We grew apart, Eliot. We want different things. I need someone who can give me the life I deserve. The life you deserve? I tested the phrase, rolling it around like a wine taster. And what life is that exactly? A life with security, with status, with someone who has ambition. I see. And Jake provides all that? Yes. Even now, with his business falling apart, with auditors crawling all over his finances, with his condo on the market and his partners ready to throw him under the bus? Her face went white. How do you know about that? I know lots of things, Samantha. I know Jake's been cheating on you with a brunette from First National Bank. I know he's been using company funds for personal expenses. I know he's leveraged so far into debt that he can barely make his car payments. That's not true. I know he calls you his project when he's drinking at Darla's tavern. I know he brags about stealing you away from your loser husband to anyone who'll listen. She stood up shakily. You're lying. Am I? Why don't you ask him? Ask him about the brunette. Ask him about his finances. Ask him what he really thinks about you. You did this. Her voice was barely a whisper. The audits, the investigation. You're trying to destroy him. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just a simple engineer who fixes broken things. Speaking of which, how's your career going? I heard there might be some questions about your role in Jake's creative accounting. You bastard. Now, that's no way to talk to your husband. At least, not until the divorce is final. She turned and ran upstairs, her heels clicking on the basement steps like gunshots. A few minutes later, I heard the front door slam. I went back to carving my chess set, humming softly to myself. The knight was coming along nicely, strong, proud, ready for battle, just like me. The city's winter festival was scheduled for the last Saturday in January, a desperate attempt to bring life to downtown during the dead months. Ice sculptures, hot chocolate stands, and a pathetic attempt at a winter market filled the town square. Families bundled in heavy coats pretended to have fun while local businesses hawked their wares to anyone brave enough to venture out in sub-zero temperatures. I'd been planning this moment for weeks. Mick had provided me with everything I needed: photos of Jake and Samantha at the Riverside Inn, photos of Jake with his brunette bank teller, financial records showing the embezzlement, and best of all, a recording of Jake bragging at Darla's tavern about his conquest of the engineer's wife. The festival's main stage featured local bands, political speeches, and a community announcement system that could be heard 3 blocks away. More importantly, it featured a video screen for displaying sponsor advertisements and community messages. I'd volunteered to help with the technical setup, citing my electrical background. The volunteer coordinator was thrilled to have someone who actually knew how to work the equipment. What she didn't know was that I'd also installed a wireless override system that would let me take control of the display from my phone. By 2 o'clock, the festival was in full swing. Families clustered around the ice sculptures, kids threw snowballs in the designated play area, and local politicians worked the crowd with practiced smiles and empty promises. I spotted Jake near the hot chocolate stand, looking nervous and checking his phone constantly. Samantha was nowhere to be seen. I positioned myself near the stage, close enough to see reactions but far enough away to avoid immediate suspicion. At exactly 2:30, I activated my override system. The sponsor advertisements disappeared, replaced by a photo of Jake and Samantha entering the Riverside Inn together. The image was crystal clear, unmistakably them, unmistakably intimate. A murmur ran through the crowd. People pointed at the screen, confused. Someone near the stage yelled, "Hey, isn't that Jake Halpern?" The photo changed. Jake and Samantha kissing in the hotel parking lot. Jake's hand on her ass, her arms around his neck, both of them clearly enjoying themselves. The murmur became a buzz. I saw Jake pushing through the crowd, his face red with rage and embarrassment. The third photo showed Jake with his brunette bank teller, same hotel, same intimate poses, taken just 2 days after the photos with Samantha. Now the crowd was talking openly. I heard fragments of conversation. "That's his wife's boss. Isn't she married? What a scumbag. Poor husband." Jake reached the stage just as the audio kicked in. His own voice, recorded at Darla's Tavern, amplified through the festival's sound system for everyone to hear. "She's married to some loser engineer who can't afford to take her anywhere nice. I'm showing her what a real man can provide. Poor bastard has no idea his wife's getting the best intimacy of her life from his wife's boss." The crowd went silent, then erupted in shocked chatter. Jake frantically gestured to the volunteer coordinator, pointing at the screen, but she was as confused as everyone else. The recording continued. "I told her I'd marry her, but honestly, once I'm done with her, I'll probably move on. There's this hot little brunette at the bank who's been giving me signals. Why limit myself to one when I can have both?" Someone in the crowd shouted, "You're a piece of shit, Jake." Others joined in. "Where's your wife, asshole? What kind of man cheats on his pregnant girlfriend? You're disgusting." Jake spotted me in the crowd and started pushing his way toward me, his face twisted with fury. I smiled and waved, then calmly walked toward the edge of the square. "You jerk!" Jake shouted, breaking into a run. "I'll kill you!" I led him away from the crowd, down a side street lined with old brick buildings and narrow alleys. Jake was in decent shape, but anger made him sloppy. He slipped on a patch of ice, caught himself, and kept coming. "You think you're so smart," he panted, gaining on me. "You think you can destroy my life?" "I think you destroyed your own life," I called back. "I just provided the documentation." We reached the alley behind Murphy's Hardware, a narrow space between buildings that the city never bothered to plow. Jake cornered me near the dumpsters, his breath coming in angry clouds. "You're finished," he snarled. "I'll sue you for everything you have. I'll destroy you." "With what money? Last I heard, your assets were frozen pending investigation." He swung at me, a wild haymaker that telegraphed itself from 3 feet away. I ducked, grabbed his wrist, and used his momentum to send him face first into the brick wall. He bounced off and staggered backward, blood streaming from his nose. "You broke my nose!" "You broke my marriage. I'd say we're even." He charged again, this time low and desperate. I sidestepped and stuck out my foot. Jake went down hard, sliding across the icy pavement on his stomach. His expensive coat tore on the rough asphalt, and his perfect hair was now full of slush and garbage. "Stay down, Jake. You're embarrassing yourself." He struggled to his feet, slipping and sliding like a drunk on an ice rink. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Your business is finished, your reputation is destroyed, and your girlfriend just found out you've been cheating on her. It's very much over. Samantha loves me. She'll stand by me. Samantha loves your money. Without it, you're just another middle-aged loser with a receding hairline and commitment issues." He tried to charge me again, but his feet went out from under him. This time he landed hard on his back, the wind knocked out of him. I stood over him, looking down at the man who'd thought he could steal my wife and brag about it. "Here's what's going to happen, Jake. You're going to leave town. You're going to find a new job somewhere far away from here. And you're never going to contact my wife again." "Go to hell." "I've been there. It's a lot like being married to someone who doesn't love you." I turned to walk away, then stopped. "Oh, and Jake? Your fly's been open this whole time. Might want to fix that before you go back to the festival." I left him lying in the alley, broken and humiliated, struggling to zip his pants with hands that shook from cold and rage. Back at the festival, the crowd was still buzzing about the display. The volunteer coordinator had finally figured out how to shut off the screen, but the damage was done. Everyone was talking about Jake Halpern and his affairs, about the poor engineer whose wife had been cheating on him, about what a scumbag Jake was. I bought a hot chocolate and wandered through the crowd, listening to conversations. Did you see his face when that recording played? I feel so bad for the husband. He seemed like such a nice guy. Jake Halpern always was an arrogant prick. Nice to see him get what he deserves. That poor woman finding out her boyfriend's been cheating on her in front of the whole town. Poor woman. They were talking about Samantha like she was the victim, not the willing participant in destroying my marriage. That would have to be corrected. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won? This is just the beginning. S. Samantha. Probably borrowing someone's phone since she'd blocked my number weeks ago. I typed back, looking forward to it. By the way, check the festival website. I uploaded some additional photos you might find interesting. I hadn't actually uploaded anything to the festival website, but she didn't know that. Let her panic for a while, wondering what other evidence I had. The truth was, I had plenty more. Photos of her using company credit cards for personal purchases, records of her falsifying expense reports, documentation of her helping Jake embezzle funds from client accounts, enough to destroy her career and possibly send her to prison. But I was saving that for the grand finale. As the sun set over the festival, families packed up their children and headed home to warm houses and intact marriages. I walked back to my car, passing the alley where Jake was probably still trying to clean the slush out of his hair. Tomorrow, the story would be all over town. By Monday, it would be in the newspaper. By the end of the week, everyone in the city would know that Jake Halpern was a cheating scumbag and Samantha Carver was a homewrecker who'd destroyed her marriage for a man who called her a temporary amusement. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The real show was just beginning. February brought a cold snap that froze the city solid and drove everyone indoors, except those who had no choice. I was one of those people, working overtime on emergency repairs to water mains that cracked under the pressure of expanding ice. It was miserable work, but it gave me time to think, and thinking was what I did best. Samantha had moved out the week after the festival, taking only her clothes and personal items. She was staying with her sister Trish, who'd been surprisingly cold to her since the public humiliation. Apparently, even family loyalty had its limits when it came to public embarrassment. Jake had disappeared entirely. Mixed sources said he'd fled to Boston, where he was staying in a cheap motel and trying to find work. His former partners had cut him loose, his assets were still frozen, and his reputation was destroyed. The brunette bank teller had filed a harassment complaint against him, claiming he'd promised to leave his girlfriend for her. But I wasn't satisfied with their exile. Exile could be reversed. Reputations could be rebuilt. Money could be earned again. What I wanted was permanent consequences, the kind that would follow them for the rest of their lives. That's when Trish called me. Eliot, it's Trish. We need to talk. About what? About my sister. About what she's done. About what I know that you don't. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where truckers stopped for coffee and nobody paid attention to anyone else's conversation. Trish looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair unwashed and pulled back in a ponytail. Samantha's not the victim here, she said without preamble. I know everyone thinks Jake seduced her, but it wasn't like that. Tell me. She planned it. All of it. She's been looking for a way out of your marriage for over a year, ever since Jake got promoted to partner. She saw an opportunity and she took it. I sipped my coffee, letting her talk. She used to call me, bragging about how she was going to trade up, how she was tired of being poor, tired of living in that little house, tired of being married to someone who worked with his hands. She said Jake was her ticket to the life she deserved. What about the pregnancy? Trish's face darkened. That's the worst part. She's not pregnant, Eliot. She was never pregnant. The coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. What? She made it up. The whole thing was a lie to force Jake's hand, to make him commit to leaving his girlfriend and marrying her. But at Christmas, she announced a lie. She figured if she told the family publicly, Jake would have to go along with it to save face. She was going to lose the baby in a few weeks after they were safely engaged. I set down my cup carefully, afraid I might throw it. You're sure about this? I'm sure. She told me the whole plan. She thought it was brilliant. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm sick of her shit. Because she's been staying in my house, crying about how you destroyed her life, acting like she's the victim. Because she's talking about trying to reconcile with you, to get you to take her back now that Jake's gone. Reconcile? She thinks if she plays the repentant wife, you'll forgive her. She's counting on you still loving her enough to give her another chance. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. She thinks I'd take her back. She thinks you're weak. She's always thought that. She used to tell me how easy you were to manipulate, how you'd do anything to make her happy. What else did she tell you? Trish pulled out her phone. I recorded some of our conversations. I thought someday I might need insurance against her. She scrolled through files. Listen to this. Samantha's voice came through the phone speaker, tinny but clear. Eliot's so pathetic. He actually bought my grandmother's ring from the estate auction, spent months working overtime to afford it. I'm going to sell it and use the money for my honeymoon with Jake. Another recording. The best part is, Eliot will probably blame himself when I leave. He'll think he wasn't good enough, that he should have tried harder. He'll never figure out that I was planning this all along. And another. Jake thinks he's using me, but I'm using him. Once we're married, I'll have access to his money, his connections, his social circle. If he ever tries to leave me, I'll take him for everything he's worth. I listened to my wife's voice, plotting my destruction with the clinical detachment of a surgeon. Every word was a scalpel, cutting away the last remnants of whatever love I'd felt for her. There's more, Trish said. Financial stuff. She's been stealing from your joint accounts for months, moving money to a private account Jake helped her set up. She was planning to clean you out before she filed for divorce. How much? About $15,000. Your savings, your emergency fund, everything. I closed my eyes, calculating. $15,000. The money I'd saved for a down payment on a bigger house, for the family we'd planned to have, for emergencies and retirement, and all the dreams that were now dead. I want copies of everything, I said. I figured you would. Trish handed me a flash drive. Audio files, bank records, emails, text messages, everything I could get. Why are you doing this? Because she's my sister and I love her, but she's also a selfish witch who's never faced consequences for anything she's done. Maybe it's time she learned what the real world is like. I pocketed the flash drive. What's she planning now? She's going to show up at your house tomorrow night. She's going to cry, apologize, beg for forgiveness. She's going to tell you the baby was Jake's idea, that he forced her into the affair, that she realized she loves you and wants to make it work. All lies. Every word. She's been practicing in the mirror. I stood up, throwing money on the table. Thank you, Trish. This changes everything. What are you going to do? I'm going to give her exactly what she deserves. That night, I worked in my basement until dawn, preparing for Samantha's visit. I set up a video camera hidden behind my tool cabinet, positioned to record our entire conversation. I copied Trish's files to multiple drives, storing them in different locations. I called my lawyer and arranged for him to be available on short notice. Most importantly, I called Mick. I need a favor, I said. A big one. What kind of favor? The kind that involves the police, the district attorney, and a very public arrest. Jesus, Eliot, what are you planning? Justice. Pure and simple justice. Saturday evening, Samantha knocked on my door at exactly 7 o'clock. She was dressed carefully. Not too attractive, not too casual, just vulnerable enough to elicit sympathy. Her eyes were red from crying, her makeup slightly smeared. She'd prepared for this performance like an actress preparing for the role of her life. "Hello, Eliot." "Samantha, this is a surprise. Can I come in? Please? I need to talk to you." I stepped aside, letting her into the house she'd abandoned. She looked around the living room like she was seeing it for the first time, taking in the improvements I'd made since she left. "You've been busy," she said. "Staying occupied. What can I do for you?" "I want to come home." There it was, the opening line of her script. Home? I made a terrible mistake, Eliot, the worst mistake of my life. I let Jake manipulate me, convince me that I wanted things I didn't really want. I realize now that what I want is you, us, our marriage. What about the baby? Her face crumpled in perfectly rehearsed grief. I lost it. The stress, the guilt, everything that happened. I lost our baby. Our baby. Even knowing it was a lie, the words hit me like a physical blow. "I'm sorry," I said. "That must have been difficult." It was, but it made me realize what's really important. Not money or status or any of that superficial garbage. What's important is love. Real love. The kind we had. Had? The kind we can have again, if you'll give me another chance. She moved closer, reaching for my hands. I let her take them, feeling the wedding ring she still wore. "I know I hurt you," she continued. "I know I destroyed your trust, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn it back. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. I just want my husband back." "What about Jake?" "Jake was a mistake, a horrible, selfish mistake. He used me, Eliot. He promised me things he never intended to deliver. He made me believe he loved me, but all he wanted was to control me." "I see. I know it will take time. I know you have every right to hate me. But somewhere in your heart, don't you still love me? Don't you still want to save our marriage?" She was good. Really good. If I hadn't known the truth, hadn't heard her real thoughts in her own voice, I might have believed her. "I do still love you," I said. Her face lit up with hope and triumph. "Really?" "I love the woman I married 8 years ago. The problem is, that woman doesn't exist anymore." The hope flickered. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know about the money you stole from our accounts. I know the pregnancy was fake. I know you planned this whole thing to trade up to a richer husband." Her mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the cold calculation underneath. Then it snapped back into place. "That's not true. Who told you that? Does it matter? The point is, I know who you really are now." "Eliot, please. You're wrong about this. Someone's been lying to you." I pulled out my phone and played one of Trish's recordings. The best part is, Eliot will probably blame himself when I leave. Samantha's face went white as her own voice filled the room, detailing her contempt for me and her plans for my destruction. "Where did you get that?" "From someone who got tired of your lies." "It's not what it sounds like. I was angry, hurt. I didn't mean any of it." "Which part didn't you mean? The part where you called me pathetic? The part where you planned to steal my money? Or the part where you admitted the whole thing was a setup?" She tried a different approach, switching from denial to anger. "Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth. I did plan it. I did use Jake to get away from you. You know why? Because I was dying in this marriage. Dying of boredom, of poverty, of being married to a man with no ambition. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won something? You destroyed Jake's career, humiliated me in public, turned my own family against me. Are you proud of yourself?" "Actually, yes, I am." "Well, congratulations. You've ruined my life. I hope it was worth it." "Oh, I'm not done yet." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, to find Detective Morrison and 2 uniformed officers. "Mr. Carver, we have a warrant for the arrest of Samantha Carver on charges of embezzlement and fraud." Samantha stared at the officers in shock. "What? This is ridiculous. I haven't done anything wrong." "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent." As they read her rights, Samantha turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. "You bastard, you planned this. Just like you planned to destroy my life. The difference is, I succeeded." They led her away in handcuffs, her carefully planned performance ending in the back of a police car. I watched from my front window as the neighbors came out to see what was happening, as the woman who'd thought she was too good for me was driven away like a common criminal. My phone rang. It was Mick. "It's done," he said. "Jake was arrested in Boston an hour ago. Same charges. Turns out when you're facing prison time, people are real eager to cooperate with investigators. What's the prognosis? 5 to 10 years if they're convicted. Which they will be, considering the evidence." I hung up and looked around the house that was finally, truly mine again. Tomorrow I'd start the divorce proceedings. Next week I'd change the locks. Next month I'd begin rebuilding my life. But tonight I was going to finish my chess set. The trial lasted 3 weeks and made front-page news every day. Jake and Samantha, once the golden couple of the local business scene, sat at separate defense tables looking like they'd aged 10 years in 6 months. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. Embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and enough financial crimes to put them both away for a decade. I testified on the second day, playing the role of the betrayed husband who discovered his wife's crimes through their shared financial accounts. The jury ate it up. 12 middle-class citizens who saw themselves in my position, who understood what it meant to work hard and play by the rules only to be betrayed by someone you trusted. Samantha's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of Jake's manipulation, but the recorded conversations Trish had provided destroyed that narrative. When the jury heard Samantha's own voice describing me as pathetic and bragging about her plans to steal my money, any sympathy they might have felt evaporated. Jake's defense was even more pathetic. He tried to blame everything on Samantha, claiming she'd seduced him and convinced him to embezzle funds for their future together. The prosecution countered with evidence of his previous affairs and financial irregularities going back years. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon in late March. Guilty on all counts for both defendants. Jake got 8 years in federal prison. Samantha got 5, with the possibility of parole in 3 if she made restitution for the stolen funds. I felt no satisfaction watching them led away in shackles. Satisfaction would have implied I'd gotten something I wanted. This was just the natural consequence of their actions, like gravity or thermodynamics, an inevitable result of the choices they'd made. The real satisfaction came later. 3 months after the trial, I was working in my garden when a car pulled into my driveway. A woman got out, mid-30s, attractive in an understated way, wearing jeans and a simple blouse that suggested she worked for a living. "Mr. Carver, I'm Rebecca Martinez from the Tribune. I'm working on a follow-up story about the Halpern case. Could I ask you a few questions?" I don't really have anything to add to what I said at trial. Actually, I'm more interested in what happened after. How you rebuilt your life, moved forward. Our readers like stories about resilience. I set down my gardening tools and really looked at her. She had intelligent eyes and calloused hands, the kind that came from real work, not manicures and spa treatments. There's not much to tell. I got divorced, kept my job, fixed up the house. Life goes on. That's remarkably philosophical for someone who went through what you experienced. What's the alternative? Spend the rest of my life bitter about something I can't change? Some people would. Some people don't know the difference between justice and revenge. She smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes. That's a good quote. Mind if I use it? Help yourself. We talked for another hour, sitting on my front porch while she asked questions about healing and forgiveness and moving forward. She was easy to talk to, the kind of person who listened more than she spoke, who seemed genuinely interested in understanding rather than just getting a story. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said as she was getting ready to leave. "Shoot. Do you ever regret it? What you did to them?" I considered the question seriously. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that two people I cared about chose to destroy themselves rather than live with integrity. But do I regret exposing the truth? No. The truth is just the truth. It doesn't care whether we like it or not. That's very zen. That's very practical. I'm an engineer. I deal with reality, not wishful thinking. She handed me her card. "If you ever want to talk more, off the record, give me a call. I think you're an interesting man, Eliot Carver." After she left, I sat on my porch thinking about the conversation, about justice and revenge, about truth and consequences, about the difference between what people deserved and what they got. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed my life for nothing." Samantha, texting from prison. I'd blocked her previous numbers, but apparently she'd found a way around that. I typed back, "You destroyed your own life. I just documented it. I loved you. I made a mistake, but I loved you." "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me as a safety net while you looked for something better. There's a difference." "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I'm sorry." I stared at the message for a long time. Two words that might have meant everything 3 years ago, when I'd first suspected something was wrong. Two words that might have changed everything if she'd said them before the lies and betrayal and calculated cruelty. Now they were just two words from a stranger who happened to share my last name. "I know you are," I typed back. "But sorry doesn't fix broken trust any more than regret fixes broken bones. Some things, once broken, stay broken." I blocked the number and deleted the conversation. That evening, I called Rebecca Martinez. "This is a surprise," she said. "Decide you wanted to add something to the story?" "Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner sometime. Off the record." "Are you asking me on a date, Mr. Carver?" "I'm asking if you'd like to spend time with someone who's learned the difference between what looks good and what actually is good." That's the most interesting pickup line I've heard in years. Is that a yes? That's a yes. We had dinner the following Saturday at a small Italian place downtown, the kind of restaurant where the food mattered more than the decor. Rebecca told me about her work, her family, her plans to write a book about small-town crime. I told her about my job, my house, my chess set that had finally been finished. "Do you play?" I asked. "Badly, but I'm willing to learn." "I could teach you. Chess is all about thinking ahead, anticipating your opponent's moves, understanding that every action has consequences." "Sounds like you've had some practice with that." "More than I wanted." We talked until the restaurant closed, then sat in her car outside my house for another hour. When she finally left, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not for revenge or justice or settling scores, but for the simple possibility of building something new with someone who understood that love was a choice, not a feeling. 6 months later, Rebecca moved in with me. A year after that, we were married in a small ceremony at the courthouse, the same courthouse where Samantha and Jake had been sentenced, though we didn't mention that to the judge. Rebecca understood that I wasn't interested in grand gestures or expensive displays of affection. What I wanted was honesty, reliability, and someone who kept her promises. She gave me all of that and more, bringing laughter back into a house that had been silent too long. 2 years after our wedding, Rebecca was pregnant with our first child. Real pregnancy this time, with doctor visits and ultrasound photos, and all the genuine excitement I'd been denied before. We painted the nursery together, assembled the crib, and planned for a future built on truth instead of lies. The baby was born on a snowy December morning, 3 weeks before Christmas. A daughter with Rebecca's dark eyes, and what the nurses assured us was my stubborn chin. We named her Hope, because that's what she represented. Proof that broken things could heal, that trust could be rebuilt, that love was possible even after betrayal. I was holding Hope in the hospital room, marveling at her tiny fingers and the way she gripped my thumb like an anchor, when my phone buzzed with a news alert. Former marketing executive dies in prison fight. Jake Halpern was dead, killed by another inmate in what the report called a dispute over gambling debts. He was 45 years old, survived by no one who mourned him. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, no sense of cosmic justice. Jake had made his choices, faced the consequences, and now his story was over. My story was just beginning. "What is it?" Rebecca asked from the hospital bed. "Nothing important," I said, deleting the alert. "Just old news." I looked down at my daughter, sleeping peacefully in my arms, and thought about the world I wanted to build for her. A world where actions had consequences, where truth mattered more than convenience, where people kept their promises and honored their commitments. A world where she would never have to learn the difference between justice and revenge, because she would never need either one. Outside the hospital window, snow was falling on the city where I'd been born, where I'd been betrayed, and where I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge was simply living well. The city where my daughter would grow up, knowing she was wanted, planned for, and loved by parents who had chosen each other with their eyes wide open. I kissed Hope's forehead and whispered a promise. "I'll teach you to build things that last. I'll teach you to keep your word. And I'll teach you that the best way to defeat your enemies is to be so happy they become irrelevant." Rebecca smiled at me from across the room, her face glowing with the kind of contentment that came from genuine love rather than calculated advantage. In her eyes, I saw the future we would build together, honest, stable, and strong enough to weather any storm. The past was dead and buried. The future belonged to us.